All right, grade 9. I hope that you are all doing well today. So, we have been speaking about another civilization of our world history book, and that is the civilization of the early Greece or the ancient Greece civilization. We have first spoken about the early Greece and their location where they lived, and that it was first called the island of Crete. Later on, we spoke about the first people to inhabit Greece, and they were called the Minoans. Those people, the Minoans, they were very excellent in trading, as they were coastal people. They were located across three continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa. So they have access to the Eurasian Sea. By using the Eurasian Sea, they could trade with many civilizations, like the ancient Egyptian civilization and also the Mesopotamian civilization. Because of the location of the land, they had access to grow some excellent crops, the best in the world. So they traded these crops with the other civilization, and they took back from Egypt some precious stones like copper, ivory, gold, and silver. Besides, they adapted the technology from the Mesopotamian civilization, like that of the cartwheel or even the writing or the written language itself. So the Phoenician, they made the first alphabet, and the Greek took it from them, and they alternated to be able to use it easily for them. The place that they lived in was called the Palace of Knossos, and unfortunately, this place was destroyed in some an unknown incident. Some scientists and scholars refer that to some natural disaster like a volcano eruption, a tidal wave, or even an earthquake. But one of the main reason for the decline of the Minoans after the destruction of the Palace of Knossos was the invasion of the Mycenaeans. The invasion of the Mycenaeans. So the Mycenaeans were their neighboring people, and they started to invade them in order to have control of the land and also the place itself that had access to some very important water passages. The Mycenaeans guys, once they started to invade the Minoans, they took their place in trading. So they started also to trade with the same civilizations, the Egyptian and the Mesopotamian civilization, beside the island of Sicily. So they had access to the Eurasian Sea and the Mediterranean Sea, and from that they started to trade with the other civilization, like the ancient Egyptian civilization and also the Mesopotamian civilization beside that island of Sicily. The trade brought them wealth, of course, via the sea. So by trade, they became very rich, and they started to develop and also to adapt to the new circumstances of their age. Yet, like any other civilization, at one point there was the Trojan War, the war between Troy and the Dorians. Another Greek people have came to Troy, the city of Troy, because of its location and its access to the water passages, and it was very, very wealthy by using trade with other civilization. So they needed to take it. So what happened was the Trojan War. Of course, the Trojan War is divided into two parts. The first part is because of some political reasons, which is which are the location, the access to water passages, and also the wealthy that they had. And another one in the legend that the prince of Troy, whose name was Paris, kidnapped Helen, one of a Greek king's wife. So he took her and he kidnapped her and took her back to Troy. So that Greek king asked the help of his brother, a Dorian king, and both of them marched toward Troy in order to get Helen back. And of course, the idea or the story itself varies from one storyteller to the other. And the best storytellers we have in history in that era or in that period was Homer himself. Homer, he was a blind storyteller. he was a poet, and he was a storyteller, and most of the poems and stories that he told us orally, and they were passed from one generation to the other generation orally, not written, orally. Later, after some few generations, they were written down. Homer himself told us about the great Greek legends, and we have the best legend of all was the Iliad, and another one was the Odyssey. One of his two best awesome great epic tales, the Iliad and the Odyssey, referring to the period that is unknown to us, because after the Mycenaeans declined, they abandoned the city, they abandoned the writing, they abandoned the civilization itself. So we had no written clue or written evidence about their life at that time, the period from 1100 until 800. That period is unknown to us. Consequently, most of the events, most of the tales that we know came from the Iliad and the Odyssey, because at that time he told us the epic tale about what happened in that era or in that period. So we consider the Iliad to be our chief source of information about the Trojan War. The Trojan War happened between the people of Troy and the Dorians or the Dorian king, and eventually they could win the war and destroy Troy and burn it to the ground because of the smartness and the anger of Achilles. Achilles, he was one of the skilled or the most skilled warrior at that time. This man was very, very, very skillful in using both the sword and the arrow. He was, and even the spear. He was very, very excellent. Uh, at one point, Achilles he refused to join the war because he had some misunderstanding by his commander, as his commander insulted him, and he just skipped the war and did not take part in it until his best friend Patroclus was killed in action by the Trojan prince Hector. And after that, Achilles came back to war and he challenged Hector and he killed him, and then he tied him to his cart and took his body with him. And no one could stop him from destroying Troy until he came to the idea of the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse. The Trojan horse was simply a wooden made horse, a giant one, and the Dorians warriors they hid inside the horse until night came and they started to flee from the horse and burn the city down. This was about all of this was mentioned in the Iliad, and that's why we call it our chief source of information about the Trojan War, because it tells us very, very accurate events that happened at that time, which we have no clue about from any other source. Regarding to the Odyssey happens after the Trojan War, as the man whose name was Odysseus took a journey that took him 10 years. This journey should have only taken a couple of weeks, but he was lost in sea and a mermaid met him and he stayed there. And later he speaks about some myth that the goddess came to him, Aphrodite, and she helped him to go back to his family, and he saved his family from the people who wanted to treat them badly or even to hurt them. And from the Odyssey, we learn that man has a very huge responsibility towards his family and that he must keep his family safe. And from the Iliad, we learn that anger is not always the solution. Okay? That's approximately what we have studied in 10 minutes. Wow, that's great. So, do you have any question about what we have already covered now?
No.
Okay, so everything is becoming easier now?
Yes.
Okay, if you do not understand anything, you can ask me or go back to the recorded sessions. All right, so let's start now with the legacy of Homer's epic. Salman al-Humaydan, can you read please? The Legacy of Homer's Epic. Salman al-Humaydan. Hello. Salman al-Humaydan once, twice. Goodbye. Okay. Ryan al-Plowy. Hello, Ryan. I don't have a mic. Okay. Ahmad. Ahmad al-Wata'i. I believe
Yes,
you have a
teacher.
problem. Yes. Can you read please? The Legacy of Homer's Epics.
Legacy of Homer Epics takes from the what?
Iliad and
Iliad and
Odyssey.
Odyssey have been told and retold for almost 3,000 years. The Greeks thought of Homer as their greatest poet, a cultural hero. His epics have been admired throughout later Western civilization, and their stories have inspired Western writers and artists to the present. The epics portray a wide range of characters, some brave and courageous, others and cowardly and weak. Almost every kind of character written about since then was first captured in Homer's epics, including the
Faithful dog Argus, who waited patiently for the return of his master Ulysses. Last paragraph. Homer's Epics.
I complete.
Yes, please.
1 minute, teacher, please.
Take your time.
Give me the page, please.
It's page
It's not clear from the
130, and you can read from your screen. I'm sharing my screen. Can you see it?
yes, but it's not clear.
Homer's Epic.
Okay. Homer's epics reflected the Greek world view, which later had much influence on the Eastern world. The poems were not sacred religious texts. The gods played a role, but they had the same weaknesses as humans. The key figures were individual humans who displayed reason, intelligence, courage, honor, and restraint.
Very strange. Well, very good. So simply we are speaking today about the legacy of Homer's epic. Speaking about the legacy of Homer's epics, so we will start by mentioning both the tales of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Iliad and Odyssey have been told and retold for more than almost 3,000 years orally until later they were written. The Greeks thought of Homer as their greatest poet. Why is that? Because simply this man, while narrating his poems and tales, he included some events that were not known to anyone except for him, of course. And because if you can remember when we spoke about him yesterday, we said that he moved from one village to the other, or from one place to another. And by that, he had known some actions that happened in that place and the other one. So he started narrating and telling us about what happened in every and each country or any city or even any village that he visited. And by that time, they did not have the communication methods that we have today. Yeah, so they thought of him as their greatest poet. Beside, he was a cultural hero. Cultural hero. Why that? Because he preserved the culture of that era. His epics also have been admired throughout later Western civilization. They were well concise, written. Beside that, they were heavy in literary terms. They were filled with literary terms, telling us about the magnificence of of his accurate use of the literary terms and the storytelling methods. Besides, the story also inspired some of the Western writers and artists to the present day. The epics portray a wide range of characters, events, places, displaying courage, displaying courage, displaying weaknesses, displaying everything about the human nature. That's why we considered it as a wide range of source for us to use and to learn from it about the literary terms and the history of that era. Including, we have the faithful dog of Argus. The faithful dog Argus, it was the dog of Odysseus who waited 10 years for Odysseus' return. Of course, all of these epics reflected the Greek world view, how they lived, how they started to communicate with each other, how they dealt with problems, how was war to them, what was the best thing about their characters, were they honor men, were they very bad men, and like so. Also, he portrays some of the gods, and the gods at that era held the human characteristics. Like they have weaknesses, they have courage, they have intelligence. Some of them was very bad, like the god of war, Ares. So the human and the gods shared common views or common characteristics at that era. A legacy for the future. Let's see. Abdel Mohsen Al Ataibi, did you come back from the bathroom? Abdel Mohsen Al Ataibi. Ali Al Madi.
Yes, teacher.
Yeah. Can you read, please? A legacy for the future.
A legacy for the future. After the Dorian invasions, the land of Greece passed several centuries in obscurity. Obscurity. The people lived in small, isolated villages and had a few contacts with the outside world. Over time, they made the stories about Seret, is Seret or Carrot?
Correct.
Carrot and
itself nowadays, but it was named that Crete.
Okay, and Mycenae, a part of their heritage, and they built upon the legacy of those and other civilization to forge a new Greek civilization. When it emerged, this Greek civilization would not only dominate the region, it would ultimately extend the influence of Greek culture over most of the Western world.
All right, that's awesome. So, remember when we spoke about the Minoans? The first civilization in early Greece?
Yes.
Okay, the Minoans, they took Crete, the city of Crete, as their capital city. Inside Crete, they built the Palace of Knossos. Later came the Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans came and they took the city of Mycenae as their capital, and they included the heritage of the Minoans who lived in the city of Crete into their civilization. Later on, the Dorians invaded the Mycenaeans and they took both the heritage from Crete and Mycenae into their civilization and into their heritage. See the sequence? So, for example, we have three men, number one, number two, and number three. Number one came first and he built something. Number two came and invaded him and took what he built into his creation and started to complete on it. Once he started completing and constructed something else, came the man number three and took both the work of number one and number two into his own heritage and started completing on it. See the sequence now? So we have the Minoans started to construct a civilization. Later came the Mycenaeans, invaded them and took their civilization. And after them came the Dorians and took both the civilization of the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. Okay? Any problem?
No,
Any
sir.
question? Okay. So after the Dorians took both the Minoans and the Mycenaeans' heritage and included that in their own heritage, they started to construct later civilization, and their civilization started to expand further than they have ever dreamt. That it would ultimately influence the whole of the Greek culture and civilization, and even most of the Western world, as we're gonna study about the city of Sparta, Athena, etc. All right, grade 8. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, teacher.
Great. If we can look here at the early Greek civilization, we will have a look for the three main civilizations: Minoans, Dorians, and also the Mycenaeans. We need this. All right, as you can see here in the chart on page number 130, you will find out that first we have the Minoans from 1600 until 1500 BC, and they were vanished or destroyed by the 1400 BC. About their characteristics, which they had in common with other civilizations. First, they were sea traders based on the city of Crete. They absorbed the ideas from the Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilization. They worshipped the pole and the mother goddess. And their accomplishments, they later influenced Greek, living European mainland, colorful, graceful, frescoes at Knossos Palace, which was destroyed in an unknown event, and also the women they held a very high position in their society, as they enjoyed more rights than any other civilization at that time. After the Minoans came the Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans from 1300 until 1200. The Mycenaeans also, they were sea traders exactly like the Minoans. They absorbed also the ideas from both Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilization, and later went to the island of Sicily and Italy and learned from the Minoans, including the writing that the Minoans adapted from the Mesopotamian civilization, especially the Phoenician one. Okay, for their achievements, they were the first Greek-speaking culture which left written records spoken into European language, and also some of the fine gold ornaments found in their tombs, which they adapted and took from Egypt, and they conquered also the Greek land, then Crete itself, which the Minoans lived in, and took part in the Trojan war around 1250 BC. The Dorians, which had the Trojan War with the Mycenaeans, came from 1100 BC until 1000 BC. They swept away the Minoans and Mycenaeans and initiated the culture of the Dark Ages. They originated in northern and northwestern Greece, attacked the Mycenaeans in the Trojan War from the north. Okay, they conquered and settled cities of Sparta, Corinth, Argos, as well as today's Sicily, Italy, North Africa, and along of the Black Sea coast in Asia. They also are Greek-speaking people, relatively low cultural levels, because they were inventors of iron slashing swords. They were just invaders, so they did not need the art, they did not need the wisdom. All they needed was the iron and the sword. Their restrained, powerful, monumental art, an important influence on later Greek art. So for our assessment, if we are asked to identify the cause and effect of how did the Minoans create a brilliant early Greek civilization, can anyone answer that? How did the Minoans create a brilliant early Greek civilization? I need an answer.
Can I answer?
Yes, Abraham.
By the trade, I think,
Yes, nice.
and by the
Yes, Abraham. Comparison with whom? Trade with whom, Abraham?
with I don't know but by the sea to the nearby.
Okay, where did it go?
And from absorbing ideas from Egypt and Mesopotamia.
Nice. So they started to so simply the people, the Minoans, okay, sorry. So once again, the Minoans, they created a brilliant early Greek civilization by trading with other civilization like the Egyptian civilization and also the Mesopotamian one, and they included some of the inventions of the Mesopotamian into their civilization. By that, they affected later civilizations of the early Greek ones. Nice, Abraham. If we come to draw some conclusion, how do first frescoes on the walls of the Palace of Knossos reflected the history of the Minoan culture in which they produced? Remember the paintings on the wall of the Palace of Knossos, which we said
Yes.
that, yeah, it reflected their history. How is that?
Because we know their history about their paintings. They maybe paint horses and
The
yes,
bull, the goddesses, nice. So simply we come to draw some conclusion from that easily because we have the portrayed or on the walls or the paintings on the wall that show us about their actions in life, their sports, and also their gods. And her, why do you think the Minoans and the Mycenaeans absorbed ideas, customs, and skills from other cultural? That's a pretty easy one.
To create powerful civilization.
Create a powerful civilization. Nice. But why did they take it? Why did they absorb it to create a powerful civilization? And they had contact with other people. So simply, if you have contact with someone who's very smart, so you will think, why don't I become smart like him, right? So they traded with the Egyptian people and the Mesopotamians. So why not be like them? They are very excellent. They have an excellent way of life. They have some technology. So let's just become like them. That's why they absorbed their ideas in order to evolve and develop. Hypothesis. Why do you think that for centuries most people thought the Trojan War was just a legend? That's a nice one too.
Maybe because some people thought it's unrealistic because of its story.
Nice. What else?
What?
What else?
Maybe
Simply
because it's just written from someone.
not written actually, because there is no written clue of the Trojan War except for that of Homer epics. So simply because we do not have a written clue or a written evidence about that era from 1100 until 800 BC. Last but not least, summarize what is known about the causes of the Trojan War. We have two main reasons. The first one came from political views that Troy was located in a very excellent position, and the Dorians wanted to hold control of that place. And the romantic one is that because we have Paris, the prince of Troy, kidnapped Helen, the wife of a Greek king, and the Dorian king uh, supported his brother in a conquest, and they started to invade Troy. So we have two main reasons. Any questions so far, grade 9?
No, thank you.
No, thank you, teacher.
Okay, thank you very much. If you have any question, have no hesitation to send it to me on Classera or even ask me in the session. And today's Thursday, right?
Yes.
Yes, teacher.
Okay. Enjoy your weekend, boys. See you next week.
Thank you,
You
teacher.
too. Thank
You
you.
are very
Thank you, teacher.
welcome. Goodbye.